Tribu Amgo. The more you know about the past, the better prepared you are for the future. The Tribal Advocacy. An individual learns, develops, and matures based on his experiences. Great encounters fill in as his wellspring of pride and certainty, while awful encounters serve his wellspring of learning. By getting, learning, and handling our encounters as a country, we acquire national pride from our great encounters and gain from terrible ones. Culture and history offer a storage facility of data about how individuals and social orders to act. The past causes the present, thus what's to come. Spanish and American colonization, just as collaborations through exchange with other neighboring nations, has carried a kaleidoscope of societies to the Philippines. This one-of-a-kind blends of remote impacts created a complex, however, lovely neighborhood culture that in one way or another ended up being particularly Filipino. The Philippines has an interesting society shaped from different impacts, to a great extent from Spain and the United States. Filipino culture may have highlights from different societies, however, the combination of remote impacts and indigenous human advancement is the thing that makes the nation from the remainder of the world. Much the same as its 7,107 islands, Philippine culture is assorted to such an extent that Filipinos, any place they are on the planet, can without much of a stretch adjust to their condition and endure. We unequivocally accept that we should show each kid in the Philippines what they must realize and think about their own nation's history, with the goal that our youngsters and our kids can live by reality. A reality that set us free. Our confusion and disasters as residents of the nation are all pieces of our procedure of developing ourselves. All negative and terrible occasions that were occurred before ought to be taken helpfully to comprehend and address ourselves. Our way of life is significant. It is a piece of our personality. We should not underestimate it. We should not abandon it. What's more, particularly, we should not be embarrassed about it. The pre-colonial period. Architecture. It was preferable to live along the shorelines during the pre-colonial period where subsistence and trading were convenient. Native house architecture. Houses were made of bamboo and roofs made of nipa mangrove palm and stood on stilts to protect from high tides or for those built on dry lands, the space underneath was used as storage. Today, in the countryside, this type of housing continues to thrive. Early Metal Age. The earliest metal tools in the Philippines are generally said to have first been used somewhere around 500 BC, and this new technology coincided with considerable changes in the lifestyle of early Filipinos. Iron tools. Various types of iron tools recovered from burial. The new tools brought about a more stable way of life, and created more opportunities for communities to grow. Rice god. Bulul, also known as Bul-ul or Tinagtagu, is a carved wooden figure used to guard the rice crop by the Ifugao peoples of northern Luzon. The sculptures are highly stylized representations of ancestors and are thought to gain power from the presence of the ancestral spirit. Tattooing. Tattooing in the Philippines, to some, were a form of rank and accomplishments, and some believed that tattoos had magical qualities. Portrait of Lakay Laosan, a Tinggian man. Abra portrait of a tattooed Kalinga woman. Evidence of Chinese tradeware ceramics dating from the Sung dynasty, the Yuan dynasty and the Ming dynasty abound in many looted sites in Cebu. Chinese celadonwares, noted for their luscious glaze, from the early Ming dynasty period, probably 1400s. From burials in Argao and Laloan. Utilitarian and ritual potteries. Artifacts from recent excavations and looting of burial sites in Bantayan, broken earthenware potteries and human skeletal fragments, ritual vessel with carinated shoulder and body, and utilitarian potteries. Boat-shaped coffins used for reinterment, reburial or secondary burial. The pre-colonial Cebuano, like many other groups in island Southeast Asia, believed that the soul traveled to the heavens on a boat at specific times after death. The Spanish conquest. Years after the death of Magellan in the Battle of Mactan, on April 27, 1565, the Spanish expedition led by Miguel López de Legazpi dropped anchor of the port of Cebu. This started the formal colonization of Cebu, and later, the archipelago under Spain. Old infrastructures located in Cebu. Casa Gorordo. Casa Gorordo is located in the Parian, an old district whose origins are traceable to a Catholic parish established in 1614. Its first settlers were Chinese traders and craftsmen who came mostly from the Fujian province. Built around 1850, 4 generations of the Gorordo family lived in this house. Master's bedroom of the Gorordo family. A fine dining set influenced by Spaniards. A Japanese teacup that imprints geisha woman when it is lighted. Unique feature of the house where a chapel was built inside. Museo Sugbo, Cárcel de Cebu. Museo Sugbo is located in the former Cebu Provincial Detention and Rehabilitation Center (CPDRC). It was once called Cárcel de Cebu, the provincial jail of Cebu. It is now the Cebu Provincial Museum. The museo was designed by Domingo de Escandrias in 1869. It was originally proposed to be the main prison for the Visayan district because of its somewhat considerable size when it was constructed. The construction started in 1871. It was believed that the coral blocks from the demolished Parian church were used to build parts of the jail. Establishment of schools. University of San Carlos. Certificate from the Seminario Conciliar de San Carlos, precursor of today's San Carlos Seminary and University of San Carlos. Friars' dominant position on the monopoly of education. Colegio Immaculada Concepcion. Receipt from the Colegio Immaculada Concepcion, the school for girls in Cebu. This document was issued to Leoncio Albero, secretary of the Cebu Junta Popular during and after the revolution. Religion, Catolico Romano. Basilica Menor del Santo Niño. Basilica Menor del Santo Niño is the oldest Roman Catholic church established in the Philippines. It was built on the same spot where the image of the Santo Niño de Cebu, a statue depicting the child Jesus, was found in 1565 by Spanish explorers led by Miguel López de Legazpi. Cebu Metropolitan Cathedral. The Cebu Cathedral, as it is popularly called, is the ecclesiastical seat of Metro Cebu Archdiocese in the Philippines. On 14 August 1595, Cebu has been established as a diocese and elevated as a metropolitan archdiocese on 28 April 1934. Religious artifacts. Religious artifacts which includes the Holy Cross, figures of saints, Pietà, angel, candle holders, and some head of the 12 Apostles of Jesus Christ. Emergence of industry in Spanish period. Stock certificates of Compañía de Tabacos de Filipinas. Founded in 1881 in Barcelona, Spain, the company is one of the oldest leaf tobacco dealers in the world. Created to cultivate, process and export Philippine in response to tobacco monopoly. It was very active in Cebu and had plantations and buying stations in Barilli, Damanhug, Sibonga and many other towns. Cigars. Various wooden containers of cigars made in the Philippines, around 1930s to 1940s. Philippine, Spanish language. Arte de la Lengua Cebuana. Grammar of the Cebu language, a book on how to properly speak the Cebuano language. Written by Father Francisco Encina, 1715–1760, for use by Spanish friars. Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo. José Rizal wrote the 2 novels, Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo, to open the eyes of the Filipinos under the Spanish colonization. Also, to express how unfortunate the Filipinos by their harsh law and discriminated by their own land. Philippine government. Documents of Miguel López de Legazpi's confirmation as the governor and captain general in Cebu. Encomienda system. Before the Augustinians could even establish parishes, Spanish soldiers applied for encomiendas to be assigned to them. Encomiendas were vast tracts of land awarded to loyal Spanish soldiers who joined the conquest. A holder of an encomienda had rights to extract tribute from the populace living within the encomienda. It was subject to much abuse, prompting Manila Archbishop Domingo de Salazar to issue protest letter to the king in the 1590s exposing the abuses of encomienderos. The American colonization. The failure of Spain to engage in active social reforms in Cuba as demanded by the United States government was the basic cause for the Spanish-American War. Thomasites. Thomasites is the term used to describe the hundreds of American teachers who were sent by the U.S. government to establish a public school system in the Philippines, starting in 1901. Edward Sharpe memorabilia. Edward Sharp, a B.S. education American who joined the subsequent batch of Thomasites to the Philippines aboard the transport ship McClellan. Edward Sharp was recommended to teach in the Philippines. He was later on accepted because of his excellent teaching skills. Edward Sharp was one of those Thomasites inflicted with malaria during the disease outbreak in Bohol. Despite his deteriorating condition, he was still able to manage to write. Cebu Provincial Capital. The Cebu Provincial Capital, designed by Juan M. Arellano, was inaugurated by Manuel L. Quezon during the incumbency of Governor Buenaventura Rodriguez. Construction began on December 15, 1936 under the term of Governor Sotero Cabahug, who was responsible for securing funds and the land on which to build the imposing structure. System of government, democracy. The Blue Book, official commemorative magazine issued to mark the inauguration of the new Cebu Capitol building on June 14, 1938. An extremely rare handwritten Christmas greeting by President Manuel Quezon to the writers of Bag-ong Kusog in 1935. The letter is made more meaningful not only because it is the hand of Quezon but also because it is written in Cebuano, a language that was competing to be the national language at the time that this was written. Treaty of Paris. The Treaty of Paris of 1898 was a treaty signed by Spain and the United States on December 10, 1898, that ended the Spanish-American War. In the treaty, Spain relinquished all claim of sovereignty over and title to Cuba, and ceded Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines to the United States. Sanista. Filipinos took to adapting the great American lifestyle, and the term Sanista, Saxonist, was used to describe with a sneer these Americanized natives, the new modernistas, who took to their new Western ways like the proverbial duck to water. The Americana replaced the everyday camisa that was favored in the provinces, as seen in these late 1920s photos. Men also wore straw boat hats to complement their American look. Colonial mentality. The American rule caused great marks of colonial mentality, and the materialistic and individualistic ways among many Filipinos. Lost our sense of identity and started using colonial products and goods. The Philippine-American War. The Philippine-American War, also referred to as the Filipino-American War, the Philippine War, the Philippine Insurrection or the Tagalog Insurgency, was an armed conflict between the First Philippine Republic and the United States that lasted from February 4, 1899, to July 2, 1902. The aftermath. The human cost of the war was significant. An estimated 20,000 Filipino troops were killed, and more than 200,000 civilians perished as a result of combat, hunger, or disease. Of the 4,300 Americans lost, some 1,500 were killed in action, while nearly twice that number succumbed to disease. Positively, no Filipinos allowed. Ethnic discrimination towards Filipinos in America was evident during the American colonial period in the Philippines. Filipinos were often labeled as half-civilized or half-savage, worthless, uneducated and unscrupulous. The U.S. abandoned Filipinos, and Americans, during World War II. American and Filipino troops surrendered to the Japanese at Bataan. Japanese imperialism. The fall of Bataan on April 9, 1942, ended all organized opposition by the U.S. Army forces far east to the invading Japanese forces on Luzon, in the northern Philippines. The island bastion of Corregidor, with its network of tunnels and formidable array of defensive armament, along with the fortifications across the entrance to Manila Bay, was the remaining obstacle to the 14th Japanese Imperial Army of Lieutenant General Masaharu Homma. Japanese counterattacks tempered the Filipino fighting spirit and taught us cruelty. 4 Japanese snipers shot and killed in the muddy water of a bomb crater. Journalism. Development of freedom of speech and journalism. Ang Soga, a newspaper made by Filipinos in the Japanese reign. Visayan Shimbun, newspaper during Japanese imperial administration. Golden Age of Philippine culture and arts. A Soldier's Gift to Javito S. Abelana, presented by Jiro Mizoguchi, who, according to Javito, was the only kind and good Japanese soldier during the entire Japanese occupation of Cebu. The liberation begins. Soldiers from American division units landed in Talisay after an hour-long bombardment. They landed unopposed but incur heavy casualties and damage due to land mines. Thus began the American liberation in Cebu. Baton Death March. A death march is a forced march of prisoners of war or other captives or deportees in which individuals are left to die along the way. It is distinguished in this way from simple prisoner transport via foot march. Philippine economy. Mickey Mouse money. And when the Japanese occupied the Philippines nearing the mid-1900s, so much money was released into circulation that the fiat peso became known as Mickey Mouse money for the little it could afford due to inflation. Destruction of natural heritages. A devastated Cebu city as seen from atop the Cebu Customs House, the damaged Cebu Cathedral and the provincial capitol building. Killings, rapes and other war crimes. A narration by Jovito S. Abellana in his Moments of War. Brute force. A warning from the Commander-in-Chief of the Imperial Japanese Forces. Cash prize and fines for arms and ammunition. An important notice addressed to all government officials of Cebu at that time from Hilario Abellana, temporary governor of Cebu. The Third Philippine Republic. The Rojas Administration, 1946–1948. We want to see a world where people will have enough and none will have too little. The Quirino Administration, 1948–1953. So live that you can look at every man straight in the eye. The Magsaysay Administration, 1953–1957. I believe that he who has less in life should have more in law. The Garcia Administration, 1957–1961. I would rather be right than successful. I would rather keep faith with justice than with power. The Macapagal Administration, 1961–1965. The strength of the nation lies in the well-being of the common man. Martial law. The Marcos Administration, 1965–1986. Ferdinand Emmanuel Edralin Marcos Sr. was a Filipino politician and kleptocrat who was the 10th President of the Philippines from 1965 to 1986. A leading member of the far-right New Society movement, he ruled as a dictator under martial law from 1972 until 1981. His regime was infamous for its corruption, extravagance, and brutality. The Benigno Simeon Aquino III Administration, 2010–2016. Benigno Simeon Cojuangco Aquino III is a Filipino politician who served as the 15th President of the Philippines from 2010 until 2016. Aquino is a fourth-generation politician and the chairman of the Liberal Party from 2010 to 2016. To end this virtual museum, Tribu Amgo will leave a quote from Marcus Garvey. A people without the knowledge of their past history, origin and culture is like a tree without roots.